Hello, professional fantasy football players. Welcome to the PFFL Stardom Situm Show. I'm your host, Josh Martin. It is week 3. This is where the rubber starts to meet the road, sort of. This is where your lineup really starts to take shape. Whether you're in tier 1, 2, or 3, week 3 is really where you can see guys clearly and not just wonder if it's one game or 2 games, but where the consistency really starts to take shape. So today, on this show, I'm going to go over quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. I'm going to give you guys who you should start, guys who you should sit, and also guys who you might want to look at starting this week if you're desperate based on matchups, guys I think could go off this week. This is all based on my rankings. Remember, I rank every position, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and kicker. They will be posted on PFFL.com so you can see exactly what I'm talking about and follow along with me. So let's get into it, should we? Let's start at quarterback. First thing I want to do is go over my rankings. Like I said, I've got Drew Brees at number 1 this week, Cam Newton 2, Aaron Rodgers 3, Matthew Stafford 4. Brady drops to 5 because of his matchup against Baltimore. But the first guy I really want to dive into is at number 6. That's Robert Griffin III. That's right. I got him at number 6. I am all in on RG3. He's home against Cincinnati this week. Look what Brandon Weeden did last week against Cincinnati. 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interception. What do you think RG3 is going to do? Start Robert Griffin III. If you got a guy who's in your starting lineup like Ben Roethlisberger, Jay Cutler, Matt Schaub, Phillip Rivers, those are all guys I moved down this week because of their matchup. Start Robert Griffin III over any of them. He will get you at least 15 to 20 points this week at home against Cincinnati. It's his first home game. First game in Washington. You don't think he wants to come out, prove what he can do, show what he's got? I do. Another guy I like this week because of the matchup, Michael Vick. I got him at number 9 in my rankings for quarterbacks. He's at Arizona. Now you say Arizona's defense is much improved. Look what they did to Brady. Fair enough. Brady still got points. I think Vick does something better than what Brady does. Not a lot, but one thing. That's throw the deep ball. He's got Deshaun Jackson. Arizona's a defense that plays the middle tough. That's why they held New England to what they held them to. That's why they were able to beat New England. Philly doesn't like to throw the ball over the middle, right? They like to take shots down the field, open up the running lanes for LaShawn McCoy. Look for Vick to take 3 to 4 chances to Deshaun Jackson down the field. He's probably going to connect on 1 or 2. There's where your points come in. Another guy I love this week, Alex Smith at Minnesota. Start him. I get it. It's Alex Smith. He's not the fantasy quarterback that you want in your lineup, but this week he will be. And if you got a guy like Phillip Rivers who's home against Pittsburgh, or what if you got a guy like Matt Schaub who's at Denver? Look what they did to Atlanta last week. Or Peyton Manning who's playing Houston. Come on. And Alex Smith is your guy. I got him at number 12 in my rankings. At Minnesota, Andrew Luck just had a really great game against Minnesota last week. Next on the list at 13 is Andy Dalton. Same thing. At Washington. Yeah, I just talked about what Robert Griffin III is going to do against Cincinnati. What do you think Andy Dalton's going to do against Washington? They gave up 24 points last week to Sam Bradford. Andy Dalton's going to light him up. Start him. If you got someone like Joe Flacco, who's on my sit list, I got him at 21 this week, playing New England. That's going to be a low-scoring game, a lot of dropbacks, a lot of touch passes to Ray Rice, dump-offs, a lot of dump-offs to Ray Rice, right? Not a lot of fantasy points at quarterback. Next guy on the sit list is Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers is home to Atlanta. Look what Atlanta just did against Peyton Manning, right? Atlanta's defense is the real deal. On my podcast that you can find at sportssection.podhoster.com, the sports section where I talk a little bit more sports, a little less fantasy, I picked Atlanta to go to the Super Bowl and to win the Super Bowl. Part of the reason, of course, is their new offense. You look at what the offensive coordinator there has done. He's spreading the ball out, using the weapons they have. Part of the reason is the defense. The defense is the real deal. Those 3 picks in the first 8 minutes last week, yeah, Peyton Manning's fault. Should have done better reads. But Atlanta stepped up, made the interceptions. A lot of that was caused by Atlanta. Sit Phillip Rivers this week. Joe Flacco, just talked about him. Playing New England, low-scoring game, A lot of drop-offs. Do not play Joe Flacco. The last guy on the sit list is Carson Palmer. Home against Pittsburgh. Sure, Pittsburgh defense is old. They're a little bit banged up. Not everyone's playing. James Harrison might not be in the lineup. Troy Polamalu might not be in the lineup. But you know who will be? Lamar Woodley, Ryan Clark, Ike Taylor. Those guys are going to have problems in Oakland against that Pittsburgh defense. Almost every Oakland player on my rankings have dropped because they're playing Pittsburgh. And the way that offense is built, they open up the running lane, just like Philadelphia likes to do with LaShawn McCoy. They open up the running lanes for McFadden by throwing it deep. They're not going to be able to do that against Pittsburgh. Carson Palmer isn't going to have the time. Sit him down. Let's get into running backs. A couple guys I love this week. C.J. Spiller. I have him at number 4 in my rankings at Cleveland. Number 1 is Ray Rice. Number 2 is Arian Foster. 3 is Maurice Jones-Drew. Great matchups. Spiller is 4. He's at Cleveland. He's getting the workload. Fred Jackson's still hurt. C.J. Spiller not only getting the carries, getting a lot of targets from Ryan Fitzpatrick, right? Okay. He's a guy that needs to be in your lineup. He's going to get you 20 to 25 points this week. Next guy is Michael Bush. Matt Forte didn't practice on Wednesday. Didn't practice on Thursday. Michael Bush is going to get the bulk of the carries. Is Matt Forte going to play? We'll see. We'll check it out on Friday. We'll check it out on Saturday. See what his practice is like. Will he play? It's certainly a possibility. Is he going to get goal line carries? No, he never does. Is he going to get the bulk of the carries if he's hurt? No, he won't. Michael Bush will. Look what Michael Bush did last year filling in for Darren McFadden. Is he a dynamic speedster? Not at all. But he can run. He can break tackles. He can score touchdowns. He finds the end zone. First guy I want to talk about sitting. I've got him high in my rankings. It's Darren McFadden. It's number 11. Lower than he was last week. Just talked about Pittsburgh, right? Oakland playing Pittsburgh, not going to be able to throw the ball downfield. Not going to be able to open up those running lanes for Darren McFadden. The only way I say sit McFadden is if you have a better option. Guys who moved up in the rankings. C.J. Spiller, Michael Bush, Trent Richardson, Reggie Bush. If you've got any of those guys, sit Darren McFadden this week. He will not get you as many points as they will. Ryan Matthews in San Diego. Start him. Atlanta's defense is the real deal. Look what they did to Peyton Manning. I already talked about that in the quarterbacks. But look what Willis McGahee was able to do. This is Ryan Matthews' first week back. He's been a full participant in practice so far all week. Getting contact, getting hit, carrying the ball well. All the reports out of San Diego, it looks like he could have played last week, but they wanted to be cautious. Good for them. Start Ryan Matthews this week against Atlanta. Next guy, at 21 in my rankings, Peyton Hillis. At New Orleans, start Peyton Hillis. I have him higher than Jamal Charles. Jamal Charles dropped down to 25. Was he hurt last week? Why didn't he play the second half? It's been kind of a mystery all week. But Peyton Hillis got the carries. Did he fumble at the goal line? Yeah. So he should have had a better week than he did last week. That's not going to happen all the time. New Orleans is not a good defense. They're in complete disarray. They don't have a coach. They don't have an interim coach. They have an interim head coach. Nobody knows what's going on. You can run on New Orleans. First guy I want to tell you to sit, other than McFadden, like I said, if you have better options, you sit McFadden. The guy you sit down for sure this week is Michael Turner. Got arrested on Monday night for DUI. He's in San Diego. East Coast team, sort of in Atlanta. Southeast, right? Southeast. Flying to San Diego. Not good for a running back like Michael Turner. Practiced all week, but really struggled because of the distractions off the field. I think you're going to see a lot more Jaquiz Rogers. I actually moved Jaquiz Rogers in my rankings up to 33 because of this. I have Turner at 29. So sure, I'm not saying start Jaquiz Rogers over Michael Turner. I'm saying Jaquiz Rogers is going to get some work this week. Michael Turner doesn't look like he's going to be facing any discipline, but the team might decide to discipline him a little bit. The team might decide, hey, Michael Turner, you're only averaging 2.6 yards per carry so far in the first 2 weeks. We need a more dynamic runner. That's Jaquiz Rogers. Now, for guys, if you're desperate at running back, Lamar Miller. I told you in the weekly waiver wire show earlier this week. Hopefully you listened to that. If not, you should, as well as all the other great content here on PFFL Radio. But let's say you're a guy in Tier 3. You're desperate. You need to start winning games because you need to win your league so you move up into the top tier. Lamar Miller is a guy who's going to get carries this week. The Jets are not a good run defense. They're not. It's over-exaggerated because of how good they are against the pass that they have such a good defense. You can run on the Jets. That's why I have Reggie Bush at 10. Daniel Thomas got hurt. He's not playing this Sunday. Lamar Miller's the guy who's going to spell Reggie Bush, get maybe 10 to 15 carries, and I think he'll be productive. Also, if you're desperate, Kendall Hunter at Minnesota. He is going to probably split the carries with Frank Gore. Looks like what they're doing in San Francisco is they want to keep Gore healthy for the playoffs. So they can't run him 25, 30, 35 times a game. Kendall Hunter's going to get in the game. Could get you a touchdown. Could get you yards. If you're desperate, Kendall Hunter is a good start this week. Another guy, Daryl Richardson, backup for St. Louis. Coming into the year, everyone thought Isaiah Peed was the backup for Steven Jackson. He's not. Daryl Richardson is the guy. Steven Jackson not fully healthy. I've got Steven Jackson ranked 32. Daryl Richardson ranked 43. If you're desperate, start Daryl Richardson. Let's take a look at the pass catchers. Wide receivers. Remember, PFFL, obviously, I'm sure you guys know this. It's not PPR. My rankings will reflect that. Calvin Johnson 1, Julio Jones 2, Steve Smith 3, Brandon Marshall 4, Victor Cruz 5. All guys that are going to have huge days. That's not what we're here to talk about, right? You want to know how to set your lineup. You're Tier 2. You want to move up to Tier 1. Get the big money, right? Right. So why am I wasting time on the top guys? If you got them on your team, you know to start them. Let's get into it. At number 8 and number 9, I've got the Dallas receivers. Miles Austin, Dez Bryant. Rough week last week. Guess what? Everyone has a rough week in Seattle. Green Bay is going to have a rough week in Seattle. Everyone does. Dallas is coming home. Dallas is angry. Look for them to go off against Tampa Bay. Next guy I want you to start, Mike Wallace. Moved him up to number 11. Dropped him down last week. Here's the thing about Oakland. They don't have the cornerbacks that they used to. They can't keep up with a guy like Mike Wallace. Roethlisberger is going to take 3, 4, 5, 6 shots down the field. Probably connect on 1 or 2 of them. Get you a long touchdown. If you got Mike Wallace this week, start him. Sort of in the same mold as Darren McFadden, I put Larry Fitzgerald. He's going up against Philly. Their cornerbacks are really, really good. You look what he did last week. He got 0 points against New England. New England's cornerbacks are not as good as Philly's. So, if you've got someone like Stevie Johnson, Dwayne Bowe, Miles Austin, Victor Cruz, play him instead of Larry Fitzgerald. It's weird, I know. The quarterback situation in Arizona has become an issue, unfortunately. Another guy I want you to sit this week, Percy Harvin. Tough matchup against San Francisco. Not going to be able to do the crazy trick plays because Christian Ponder's not going to have time. He's not going to get as many touches as he normally does. He's just not. Guy I want you to start this week, Vincent Jackson, Tampa Bay. Dallas cornerbacks, pretty good. Secondary, pretty good. But I think they have a tendency to get lazy every once in a while. And if you get lazy against Vincent Jackson, on one play, he will burn you. I don't have him ranked high. He's ranked 20 out of 50. But instead of a guy like Demaryius Thomas, Brandon Lloyd, or Deshaun Jackson, Vincent Jackson's your guy. Now, I do like Deshaun Jackson, but I would play Vincent Jackson over him. Guys you should look at sitting, Wes Welker. I dropped him all the way down to 32. There is something very real happening in New England right now. They are basically telling Welker, look what happens when we don't have you. We don't need you. This is a Bill Belichick moment. Remember, Welker was a holdout in training camp. Did he need to be at training camp? No. He knows the playbook. It's not changed that much because Josh McDaniels came over as offensive coordinator. Welker knows the playbook, but they're telling him they don't need him to be a successful offense. He's not playing as many snaps. Last week, he was on the field for only 45 out of their 75 snaps. Okay? It seems like most of them, and it is. But Welker averages 80% of the snaps on the field. They're sending him a message. I'm moving him down. Sit him. Another guy to sit is Eric Decker. Denver's going to have a tough time in Houston, or at home against Houston, Houston's defense is the real deal. Look what Atlanta did. They're going to do the same thing. They're going to put pressure on Peyton Manning, and they're going to understand what happens when you do that. Peyton can throw interceptions. Decker's going to have a hard day. Darius Hayward-Bay. What I already tell you about Oakland, right? McFadden, Carson Palmer. Hayward-Bay is right there. Sit him this week. Pittsburgh's going to put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Carson Palmer is not going to have time to throw downfield to Darius Hayward-Bay where he makes his living, which is down the field. Guys who you should look at if you're desperate at wide receiver, Kevin Ogletree. I just talked about Dallas. They're angry because of what happened. If Tampa Bay can stop anyone, it will be Miles Austin or Dez Bryant. I don't think they will. But I do think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Ogletree as the third wide receiver to get some looks from Tony Romo. I don't think week 1 was as big of a fluke as other people do. In Seattle, that was a tough game for the Cowboys, as it is for everyone. Look what Laurent Robinson did last year over an extended period with Dallas as the third receiver. I think Ogletree has a shot to do that this year. Another guy is Alshon Jeffrey, number 2 receiver in Chicago, playing St. Louis this week. I think he can do big things if you're desperate. Greg Little, Cleveland, going up against Buffalo. Again, if you're desperate, play Greg Little over a guy like Pierre Garçon, Lance Moore. Torrey Smith's going to have a tough time against New England. Mike Williams is going to have a tough time as the number 2 against that Dallas defense. In the waiver wire pickup show, I told you to pick up Mike Williams. I still believe that. This week's a tough matchup. So let's go to the big guys who catch the ball better than most, and that's tight end. Number 1 and 2 are always the same. Jimmy Graham, Rob Gronkowski. Might switch them up. Probably going to be in that order most weeks. Vernon Davis is number 3. Brandon Pettigrew is number 4. Got Martellus Bennett at number 5. The first guy I want to tell you about was the out-of-the-pocket choice on the waiver wire pickup show. Guy you have to go get, put on your team. If you did, congratulations. Start him this week. That's Scott Chandler. Let's say you had a guy like Antonio Gates, Aaron Hernandez. They're hurt. Scott Chandler's your guy this week. Start him. He will get a touchdown against Cleveland. Next guy is Brent Selleck. Guy who was off the radar in week 1, came back on in week 2. Good matchup against Arizona. Is Philly going to be able to work the middle of the field? No, not that much. But when they get down to the red zone, Selleck is Vic's guy. Someone you should sit this week is Antonio Gates. Doesn't look like he's playing. Owen Daniels in Houston at Denver. It's going to be a tough matchup for him. Fred Davis for Washington. I think the receivers get more love than Fred Davis does now that RG3 is there. If you're desperate at tight end, Brandon Myers and Kellen Winslow. Brandon Myers in Oakland. Kellen Winslow just signed in New England. Like I talked about with Oakland, not going to have time to throw the ball deep. Got to throw to somebody. I think it'll be Brandon Myers. So listen, that's our show for the week. Start 'em, sit 'em. Hope it works out for you. I hope you get a week 3 victory, as I'm sure you will, if you start the guys I told you about and sit the guys who I told you to sit. You will get a win. You're on your way, if you're in Tier 3, to moving up to Tier 2. If you're in Tier 2, congratulations. You're on your way to moving up to Tier 1. If you're in Tier 1, keep pushing. You want that big prize money, right? That's it for the Stardom Sit-'em show for PFFL. I'm Josh Martin. Remember, we got a bunch of great content on PFFL Radio Network. Listen to all of it. You can follow me on Twitter at JoshMartin33. I appreciate it. You can tweet me any questions you have for Stardom Sit-'em over the weekend. I'll be live on Twitter, tweeting all weekend. Remember, keep smiling, keep listening, and always look both ways.